going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm here today. It's the final week of OTAs, so that is wrapping up, getting ready to end this week, and then obviously we are going to have about 2 months, I believe it is, of a break, a window, you know, where there's no practices or anything like that right before training camp starts. So there's going to be a bit of a lull in that regard, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about. So, you know, we'll figure that out as we go. But I do have a couple things, and it didn't appear as if today was a media day for practice. So, you know, no media personnel at practice. So no like inside information on how people are doing and performing and so on and so forth. But I do have a couple things I wanted to talk about. First of all, I read this article, and I'm gonna go through it a little bit because there's some things I wanted to talk about. NFLPA, this is the title. The NFLPA Executive Director, Damari Smith, warns agents to plan for work stoppage. So, look, I mean, the thing about this is there's been talk for a little while now about, you know, when the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, expires in 2020, that there could be a, you know, like it's a strike essentially, right? Because the NFLPA is the players' union, and so, you know, it's basically saying that, you know, they're not until they at least the whole idea is they want to renegotiate the CBA, right? Because I guess, you know, people are just not really happy with it as it stands, players, you know, whatever. So anyway, so that has been a thing that's been talked about now for a minute, and it looks like it's kind of heating up a little bit. It looks like it's a distinct possibility, and so there are some things there are definitely some concerns to talk about, and some things that, you know, relate to the Dolphins. So let me get into this a bit. Rumblings about an NFL work stoppage have been percolating for months. As I said, the NFLPA Executive Director Damari Smith has reportedly sent emails to all the agents, NFL agents, saying that the union is, quote, advising players to plan for a work stoppage of at least a year in length when the CBA ends after the 2020 season. Just 100 days from the NFL centennial season. Obviously, you know, this is being talked about a lot. It's kind of a hot topic right now. Let's see. Smith, Maury Smith, the NFLPA's executive director, told Albert Breer of Monday Morning Quarterback 2 years ago that a lockout was, quote, almost a virtual certainty. You know, so we'll see what happens. Adam Schefter reported in January that teams were using language in new coaches' contracts to protect themselves in the event of a work stoppage that impacts the 2021 campaign. So this is actually, obviously, should be obvious, super important. So, look, right, because I know a lot of people hate that I compare, you know, or that I talk about Adam Gase and so on and so forth a lot, and the, you know, his tenure and stuff, but it is super important to have that, you know, information. We got to learn from, you know, we're never going to make the right choices for this franchise if we don't learn from the mistakes of the past, right? So, look, the thing is that one of my biggest issues with the way that the old regime was handled, and one of my biggest concerns with the new regime is the length of time, right? The length of time given to prove if they can do it, right? So I advocate 5 years. I think Adam Gase should have had 5 years and not 3. And since, you know, Brian Flores and this regime is in place currently, I think that they should have 5 years, the full 5 years of Brian Flores' contract. Now, having said that though, so, and the reason why, the big reason why is because just in the same regard as with draft picks, I don't think you can properly evaluate a regime or draft picks until their rookie contract or the first 5 years for a regime is over, right? So rookie contracts last 4 to 5 years depending, right? 5 years if it's a first round pick with a fifth year option, but generally 4 years, right? And I don't believe that you can properly evaluate draft picks until you've given them that full 4 years, right? Because all sorts of things can happen, and there's a lot of things that need to happen, right? They need to translate into the NFL, get caught up to the speed, learn the playbook, blah 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 blah, right? Build chemistry, so on and so forth. All these things they need to develop, so they need to get better each year. But all kinds of things could happen. They could come in and hit the ground running and make a huge impact in the first year or two and then fade off. Or maybe they, develop slowly and then, in year 3 and 4 really start to come on. Maybe they come in and beast consistently. Maybe they come in and suck consistently, right? So you just don't know, and you need to give them the opportunity to prove it. And furthermore, one of the big things is you need to give them an opportunity to face adversity. You need to give them an opportunity to really have major obstacles. Same thing goes with a coaching staff. So that's why I say in a front office, a regime, right? That's why I say 5 years, because they need an opportunity to set their culture and implement the playbooks and the schemes, right? They need to have a few drafts where they've had time to be able to prove that they can develop guys, right? So, look, and the thing is so with Adam Gase, he came in, he lit it on fire, went to the playoffs, and then what happened? The reason why we didn't, succeed the next 2 years was because of the just ungodly amount of adversity that we, unfortunately we just couldn't overcome because, again, I've said this a million times, second year was anything and everything that could happen did happen. First of all, we were out our starting quarterback and brought in Jay Cutler, which was a disaster, but then everything else, we lost Raekwon McMillan, we, a coach to snorting coke, blah, 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 hurricane, displacement, whatever, right? AWOL linebacker, everything that could happen did happen. Last year was just injuries, right? But Adam Gase should have been given a 4th year to show if his 3 years of draft picks are really going to start to come into their own, and a lot of them have, right? A lot of the core guys that we have now are here because they were good draft picks from the past regime, right? To see if him and the team could overcome that adversity, if we could get guys healthy and actually have stability across our offensive line and across the team and so on and so forth, then if they could pull themselves out and get back to the 2016 form that they were in as opposed to the 17 and 18 form, right? Now with Brian Flores and this regime, so think about it, right? They do have there's a lot of good things being talked about right now, but that's every offseason. Like Devontae Parker's apparently lighting it up and they're hyping him up. Like last year, they were like, okay, our approach is we're not really going to talk about him or say anything, or we're not going to hype him up, because we don't want to make too big a deal out of it and then disappoint everybody. Well, they're back to hyping him up like crazy, but we've seen that in the past. The year before that, it was like that, right? And then he didn't do anything. So you just don't know, and you can't read too much into what's being said right now. You have to wait until you actually see the results that come from it, right? But the thing is, so they have a huge, hole. It's a completely new coaching staff, regime. Half the team is different because they did the massive purge. You have a ton of guys that you just don't know anything about or very little about. You have to instill the culture. You're changing defensive schemes. Your head coach is a first-year head coach. There's just all of these factors that when you add it together creates this immense hill to climb. Is it insurmountable? No, I'm sure, there are examples. I know there are examples even in 2016. Nobody expected us to go 10-6 and make the playoffs, right? So things happen, right? Things happen. So look, is it possible? Yeah, but unfortunately the odds are against us, right? So, there's a hill to climb. So let's say, it's a rough year and we don't do very well this year. Not to mention we do have a really tough schedule. So, let's say we have a shitty year and we go like 3-13 or 4-12, or even if we went 8-8, right? which is at best par with, you know, the past couple decades of just mediocrity. But no Dolphin fan wants just mediocrity, right? So obviously that's not acceptable either. It's obviously worse if we go 3-13, but we want a competitive team, right? So anything now, again though, for me, to be clear, that's more reasonable of an outcome to me logically, because all of the data points it out. And so, you know, I give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Some of those things like that they can't control. It's not Brian Flores' fault he's a first-year head coach, so they need the time. But let's think about this. So let's say this year's a down year, and let's say next year, or let's say we go 3-13 this year, because of all the factors, you know, because there's gonna be injuries and, you know, whatever, right? And then let's say next year we do improve, but we only go like 6-10. Right? So we win 3 more games, but we make an improvement in 2020. But then in 2021, what if there's an entire year off from the game, right? Now, first of all, you better hope that there is some sort of provision in Brian Flores' contract to prepare and negate the effects of that. But if it happens, even if they do have a provision in his contract, so that way, like, you know, when things resume, you know, he comes back and his contract just goes from then on. Like, I don't know exactly what they would write into it, but I'm just, you know, spitballing, throwing something off the top of my head, right? So, you know, it just resumes, his contract resumes when the NFL resumes operations, right? Something along those lines, whatever. Even if that's the case, if they do take a year off or even any amount of time, that's a pretty major disruption to your business and your organization and what you're trying to build. I mean, think about it. Especially then if you have a couple down years to start with, right? I mean, so if there isn't a provision in his contract, then you waste a year of his contract. So I don't know, and this is something that we will hopefully find out for sure, for certainty, with you know, certainty in the future. But if there is no provision in his contract, and then and there is a year off or longer, if it goes longer, whatever, because the NFL is a fucking asshole, you know, money hungry, greedy organization, just like damn near everyone in this country, every other one in this country, the multi-million-dollar corporations, right? You know, and they try and stonewall the players, and the players aren't happy because they're not getting what they deserve, and blah blah blah. If it goes on, that's a pretty major disruption, and especially if there's no provision. So I mean, it's a big deal, and this really has a potential to be a major impact on, you know, how things go for this franchise and for this regime. And obviously too, I mean, it's just an interesting, you know, and certainly potentially impactful thing on just obviously the NFL as a whole, right? Because, you know, I mean, aside from the you know, more direct, I mean, I guess it's direct if the NFL is not, you know, in operation, but I'm saying, like, there is a little difference between, like, you know, the NFL just being shut down, and like there's a major difference between let's say the Patriots versus us, right? Because if the NFL shuts down for a year, I mean, the Patriots, whatever, I mean, they're established, they don't really got fucking, you know, they'll just come right back in and start it, you know, start things up like you know, nothing ever stopped, right? But because they're so established and they have been for so long, they can do that. But, you know, with a brand new regime in their first few years, that'd be hard to do, you know, after a year off for the entire NFL. And, you know, guys got to keep themselves in shape and engaged, you know, so on and so forth. And you just don't, there's going to be a waiting game. You don't know how long it's going to last, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. And it's just, it has, you know, but there's a difference between like if we didn't have to worry about, like, if we knew that there was a provision in his contract, and if the establishment was more stable, and or the franchise, the organization was more stable and not so, you know, in flux and volatile with so many unknowns and stuff, right? Then, you know, maybe we wouldn't worry about it so much, and it would just be like, damn, man, this sucks. There's no football. They need to get this shit hammered out. But we actually have pretty major concerns and things that we need to think about. Well, I think so, right? And because there are other reverberating effects that could come from this. Most notably, like I said, if the two major things to me, just one more time, and I'll kind of wrap this up, is the provision, whether or not there is a provision in Brian Flores' contract, because if there isn't, then you're wasting his contract. And then that also adds to the probability that this regime will end up getting fired before they have a chance to be successful, right? And I know a lot of people, will be like, oh no, we wouldn't hold that against him. But no, people will. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous somehow, because if we have a down year this year and next year, and then there's an entire year off, right? And then let's say that there is no provision in his contract and the third year gets wasted, and then in year 4 they have to start from, not scratch, but almost, with all the rust and so on and so forth. There wouldn't be a draft then. Jesus Christ, I didn't even think about that until just now, but there wouldn't be a draft, right? So then coming back in and start, and then if we have another down year, there's no way the regime would survive after that. No way. And people would certainly blame him for it. It'd be absolutely ludicrous, but people would. They would hold him accountable for something that and I know that to be fact, because people did it, the media did it, fans did it with Adam Gase and other regimes, and not even just with us, but with across the league. I mean, the Cardinals hired last year. This is ridiculous. Last year, and I didn't even think about this till just now. I didn't put the two things together, but last year they had a first-year head coach, brand new head coach, and then they drafted Josh Rosen 10th overall. After the year was over, they fired their first-year head coach, and obviously they traded Josh Rosen, their first-round pick from last year, to us. God damn, dude. Crazy. Anyway, so whatever. You get the idea. Let's see. Players and agents have expressed their dislike of the NFL's current CBA, which was agreed upon in 2011. Right? See, and that's what I'm saying. So, the players and the agents, they're not happy because, the NFL hides, and denies CTE for years. They, have this guise of caring about player safety, and destroy the game with, ridiculous rules and prove through their actions that they really don't. They don't really care to concede anything to the players or give them what they deserve. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And so, they're rightfully upset. And they're unhappy, but that's why I could see a potential for it even going longer than a year, because or going the full year, because these fucking greedy corporations, man. I mean, I try not to involve politics into my show here that much, but it's the same thing that goes on. Why do you think we don't have health care for every person in this country as a human right? Why do you think we have a disappearing middle class, and wealth and inequality is getting larger and larger, and we have more homeless than ever, and blah blah blah, all this other stuff, right? Because these corporations are greedy, and all they want to do is line their pockets more and crush everybody else along the way. So it's the same thing, man. And so I could see there being a potential just stalemate for a long time. Quote, the NFLPA absolutely failed the NFL players. One unnamed agent told the Boston Globe in 2013. Quote, it's the worst CBA in professional sports history. It's pushing the veterans out of the game and cuts the rookie pay in half. How is that a good deal? So there's just a couple examples, right? I mean, God damn it. And free agency, I think, was not a good implementation into the NFL. I think that actually ended up causing a lot more, fundamental issues than really it helped. But, and because then it, whatever. Anyway, I'm trying not to go off on too many tangents. San Francisco 49ers cornerback Richard Sherman told reporters last September a lockout is, quote, going to happen. Per ESPN.com's Dan Graziano, changes the NFLPA would like to see made in the CBA include an increased share of league revenue from the current 47% rate, obtaining greater guarantees in contracts, and decreasing free agent limitations, examples the franchise tag and fifth-year rookie options. The NFL and NFLPA have started negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement, though there's no indication the two sides are close to an extension. As the CBA hovers over the league and players union, the 2019 season will begin September 5th when the Green Bay Packers take on the Chicago Bears. So look, man, there's a lot that needs to be watched when it comes to that, because there could be a lot of major impacts that go into it. Okay, so the next thing, and I'm going to try and get through this quick, man, because I've already been going for a minute. So the next thing I want to talk about is, because I read this article about Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Miami doesn't need to get creative with Minkah Fitzpatrick's usage. Now, they cite some good things in here, some good statistics and stuff, and I agree with a lot of what they say, but their overall point I disagree with, right? So, you know, so I'm not gonna actually go through. I'd love to give you a lot of the stats that they give you. I'll just, it was I got this article on the Bleacher Report app. It's a Pro Football Focus news and analysis article done by an Austin Gale. That's Gayle, Austin Gale. Miami doesn't need to get creative with Minkah Fitzpatrick's usage is the title. So if you guys want to find it, I don't know if I'd be able to. I don't know how I would be able to. I guess profootballfocus.com. I would put a link in the description box of this video, but I don't know exactly what I would link to. So just profootballfocus.com is where you could find the article if you don't have like the Bleacher Report app or whatever. Anyway, because I'm not going to give you all the statistics because I want to not drag this on too long, but I'm going to give you the basic idea. So they gave a bunch of statistics on why Minkah Fitzpatrick is an exceptional slot cornerback. Okay, so, and I get that. He's great, and having versatility is wonderful, especially like you know, last year when you have a bunch of injuries. If you need to move guys around, you like versatility. You want to make sure that they'll be able to play at a high level, so on and so forth. However, last year we did see after we, you know, had to move guys around a lot because of injuries, you know, we started to see, you know, vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. Now, for me, the ideal situation in base of, you know, a base package or whatever is, you know, obviously Xavier Howard is our #1 cornerback. You would have Minkah Fitzpatrick at free safety. Rashad and TJ McDonald would be strong safety rotating. You'd have Bobby McCain as the slot corner, because he is an exceptional slot corner, and he's okay on the boundary, right? And Minkah didn't do so hot when he was on the boundary. He did all right, but he wasn't in. I mean, look, he did pretty well in every. Like, he did well in each of the positions that he played, but he definitely showed some struggles when he was playing the cornerback position as opposed to his natural safety position. Anyway, so, and then we need to find a strong #2 corner, right? And then we're fine. Like, there's been talk that, you know, he might even get used at linebacker a little bit. And look, here's the thing, right? So, you know, is just because, you know, any player is one position, right? Like, you could use defensive ends or defensive tackles, right? Like, just because that's their position and that's where they line up like 95% of the time doesn't mean they don't ever line up on the other spots, right? So there are occasions where you get linebackers that line up on the line, or you get DNs that line up as linebackers, especially and you'll see that a lot probably in our defensive scheme. Defensive tackles go out to defensive end. Defensive ends going to defensive tackle, right? So, you know, it depends on the package and the scheme and what, you know, what's going on. But his primary position, to me, you know, based off of what I can see, the you know, the analysis I have is that, you know, he needs to play at free safety, in particular with the rest of the guys that we have on the team, right? So you want to have the best 11 guys on the field. That's going to be Xavier Howard, Minkah at free safety, Jones and McDonald at strong safety. We need to find that second cornerback, and, you know, Bobby McCain as the slot guy. You know, he does not look, like I said, I mean, a lot of the stats are great, and, you know, I think that if, you know, in packages where he might, you know, end up lining up in the slot, okay, great, right? Like, you know, I guess if there's, you know, like a 4 wide receiver or 5 wide receiver set, and, you know, there are multiple slot guys, and you have Bobby McCain as one and Minkah covering another or whatever, right? I don't know, you know, so, but his primary position to me needs to be free safety. And so a lot of those stats are great and wonderful, and I love the fact that he's versatile and he's capable of doing it, and if he ever lines up there, I have confidence. But I absolutely do not think that needs to be where he plays primarily, especially because Bobby McCain is a phenomenal slot cornerback, and we just, you know, extended him to a massive contract before last year. It made him the highest paid slot cornerback because he is so good at it. But unfortunately, you know, last year he doesn't look so great because he had to play a lot of boundary, and the defense got shuffled around so much with all the injuries and stuff. So, you know, it is what it is. But like I said, so I like, it's, you know, the facts are facts, right? The stats are stats, right? And so yes, he can do great in that position, but he, from my perspective, it is my perspective that, based on the player himself and what we have on the team, you know, the other players that are going to be around him, free safety is where he belongs. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys today, and it turned out to be a lot more than I expected, but as it turns out, I can talk. But that's nothing new, and I'm pretty sure you guys figured that out by now. I go off on lots of tangents, and I get side points going, and so on and so forth. So obviously, I'm a rather loquacious person. I talk a lot, right? So, but I guess that's part of, you know, it's a trait that is useful for this kind of thing. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy it, though. I hope there's a lot of good, useful information. I hope you guys can find that article so you can read it for yourself and get the stats and stuff so you can see and then make your own evaluations. But, you know, overall, man, I hope you guys enjoy my videos. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.